pages you should bookmark if you think you might be submitting for a permit anytime soon. Step one, if you're just at aspen.gov, the easiest way to get started is to just go apply for permits. It's really easy. That's the homepage. Homepage, apply for permits. So if you're ever wondering where to start, it's a great place to start. And then I have QR codes for everything else that's about to follow. So once you go to homepage, apply for permits, we have details about land use cases. If you are changing anything about the exterior of the building or an addition to the building or something like that, you will have to go through a preliminary land use case first. That link is on this page, along with all of our permitting departments, all of the permitting types. You click into any of these links and you can see the checklist for pretty much every permit type that we have that's in Salesforce for the city. You can register for the permit portal. You can answer the question, does my project require a permit? Yes or no. All those links are on this permitting homepage. If you want to grab the QR code, go for it. But you can definitely get there from, like I said, aspen.gov homepage, apply for. Perfect. Okay. We have a permit process and payments overview. So the most APCHA relevant thing we could think of for fees, waivers do exist for new units. Those are already existing. And we do have direction from council to encourage this conversation around fee waivers and reductions for renovations and repairs. So stay tuned for that. Staff is working on it. We're expecting it possibly 2027.
Yeah, I'd like to say a couple of things about that a little bit. Again, thanks for the introduction. Ben Anderson, Community Development Director. I've been with the department for, I don't know, just about 10 years. And, you know, I think that without a doubt, and I think if you've had any interaction with our land use process or a permitting process, Aspen's codes and our land use requirements and building permit requirements ultimately were set up to respond to the bonkers development context that this town experiences. And I think sometimes that process and those fees can be overwhelming to folks who are doing work on their own property, are living in deed restricted APCHA units. And we acknowledge that. And I think when folks that are in APCHA's program approach the city, we try to provide a little bit extra level of touch just to kind of help folks get through that program. I will say that one of the things that still remains an obstacle, and we are thinking about this, we've been giving council direction to kind of think about this, is to start thinking about fee reductions and or fee waivers for remodel projects within APCHA deed restricted units in support, particularly of APCHA's growing grant program. Because the APCHA units make up just less than half of the total number of housing units in the city of Aspen, giving fee waivers reductions on any projects that happen in those units could potentially have some significant budget impacts to us. And so we are engaged in a study right now on our fees broadly across ComDev. And one of the specific questions that we're asking is, can we absorb within ComDev's budget giving fee waivers to what could potentially be a fairly significant number of requests for these kinds of reductions or waivers. So permit fees, some of them are flat. Some of them are very modest if you're doing mechanical or plumbing or electrical work. But other projects of more significant, you know, full kind of interior remodel of a unit is based on valuation. And depending on the nature of that project and what that valuation is, the permitting fees can be significant based on the calculations that are in our codes and fees. So it is a topic that we know can be an obstacle. If it is becoming a fundamental obstacle to a project that you're thinking about, please reach out and have a conversation with us about that, about how to kind of navigate that. And we do hope to have some clarity on the topic of fees, particularly as we get through our budget process and, you know, at the end of 2026, come to be put in place for 2027.
And then screenshots that you'll see on all of these slides are just kind of a teaser for what's on the page. So I hope you visit them because we've put a lot of effort into building out all of these collapsibles and whatnot. So if you want a fee calculating spreadsheet, that's on this page. If you want a step-by-step process that takes you through every status your building permit could be in, that's also on this page. Okay, document resource library. This is my favorite page, to be honest. We've broken out all the different scenarios for building permits. So you'll find checklists, document templates, pre-submittal instructions. If you have repair, if you have mechanical, pretty much any building permit related scenario, it is my genuine hope that it is represented on this page. And if it's not, let us know. Contractor licensing. So the city of Aspen in Salesforce, we also handle contractor licensing for the county. So all of your contractors will be going through the city of Aspen, regardless of, where your unit is. One thing I wanted to call out, there is a such thing as a homeowner builder situation, and it doesn't apply to most APCHA units. It doesn't apply to any multifamily. So if you are in a multifamily situation, anything bigger than a duplex, you need like a formal contracting business. You can't just take a test and contract yourself.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about multifamily requirements? This is Pat Norman, who's one of our plans examiners with the city. Talk a little bit about some of the special kind of requirements and consideration for contractors working in multifamily.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. Like Ben said, I'm Sam Erman. I do plans examining for city. That's one of the biggest hindrances that we've come across in discussions with people in APCHA units is I can't find a contractor because, well, so let me back up a little bit. As Sydney said, most everything is multifamily, larger than a single family or a duplex, with multiple units. And through the IBC, it states that you have to have a light commercial license to work in those types of buildings. So the owner builder can be done in the single family or a duplex, but when we are working in multifamily, there's a lot of consideration that comes into play from dwelling separations, meaning fire separations, sound attenuation between the two units, just many things that are there that aren't just, working your unit just doesn't affect your unit. So we require that you use someone who is licensed through the program. Sydney just, has up here the contractor licensing, and they're required to have a light commercial license. Something that we've discussed with APCHA as well is these are generally smaller projects in the big scheme of things around here when you're looking out there, and maybe not be as enticing to those contractors that have that licensing for what else is out there, what they might be giving up to do these smaller ones. So it's something that is being worked on, I think, with APCHA, and how we can find our ways around that or present better opportunities for you to connect with those types of contractors. With the city, you can reach out to us. We do have lists of contractors that do have that licensing. We can't recommend anyone, so it would be placed upon you, or the homeowner to reach out to find different things, different people that would be potentially there. It's our hope that APCHA will as well be finding some ways to navigate this, and it's something that we're constantly working on. But it is proven to be a hindrance for people wanting to take advantage of these grants and these different things there to do the work. So we are actively working with APCHA, with within the building department in the city to find ways to present workarounds, ways to find those people that can help you do that.
That would be a fun use of community pressure if you wanted to be like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had designated contractors for this instead of having to shop around for each individual project? I've heard the idea, I've encouraged the idea, and like Sam just said, if you want to use your community energy to encourage that, I encourage it. So. Anything else on contractor licensing? Cool. Permit portal supports. These are instructions for things like how to chatter your reviewers, how to see the status of all your reviews, how to know what status your permit is in the first place. Any just like tips and tricks if you're in the system and you're just like, oh my gosh, what is this portal? I don't know what's going on. We have a whole page dedicated to FAQs and assistance and communication links. Timeline estimates. So we've got a whole page dedicated to different types of building permits. We call them Q designators or project designators. So like majors would be if you're adding square footage, minors are most projects, mini or if it's like really compact, it's restricted to one area or one type of work, those are minis. So they're all posted on the website. Go take a look. It's broken up by review rounds, so you get an idea of, you know, how long in totality your permit would take. And then I included a screenshot for some of these other permit review timelines. Per conversations with APCHA earlier, maybe last year, there were some questions about like, okay, well, what if it's a repair? What if it's a mechanical permit? What if it's, you know, we've started a new like for like affidavit program for fenestration. So if you're replacing just like windows and doors, once your application is complete, then you pretty much get to pay for it like the next day. So there's a new affidavit program around that, and start to finish, that's about a week. So yeah, so there's a timeline page if you're wondering how long it's going to take. And then other city resources, builder of the day, you would get to talk with Sam or one of his teammates. Phone number, walk-ins welcome at any point in time for like really like code related things or to get some of these speedier permits started around your roofs and repairs. And then planner of the day, if you're planning any additions or changes to facade, they have walk-ins in the morning, also a phone number, but those are the two major help teams coming out of community development to support your building permits.
You know, I think our staff and I think people who regularly work in our system, the resources that are available, the organization of our website, how you go about getting into Salesforce, like all that seem, you know, we're all pretty practiced in that. We know it pretty well. And the customers who are frequently using our services are pretty comfortable with that. I will say in another part of my life, I'm trying to do some permits in another community and going into their system, even though I know the kind of basics of how all this stuff works, like going into another system onto their webpage and trying to navigate like where to start, what to get, what resources are relevant to what I'm trying to do, it is totally overwhelming. And so I would really, you know, if you start looking around on if you've got work that you're planning on doing, and you start looking around on the webpage and like, I think what we have out on the web is pretty good and pretty self-explanatory and way better than we were a couple years ago. I do still think it's a fairly overwhelming thing for people who aren't practiced in this. And so I would really encourage you to reach out to these people at the beginning of your project, because we really want to help folks carry out projects, particularly related to these unit improvements and property improvements that APCHA is trying to encourage right now. So I'd really encourage you to, we've got cards with our information here, but you know, if you start looking into how to go about a permit and it seems like it seems a bit of a mystery or remains a mystery, please reach out to these folks and we can do some I guess the word is hand holding a little bit to get through that process, because it's a lot. There's a lot of submission requirements, and it can be, for folks who don't do it all the time, it can be a burden.
I would say, just to add to that, it's a burden and a pain in the butt for people who do this all the time. And it's kind of a dumb thing that I've taken to saying, but the only dumb questions are the ones you don't ask when it comes to this stuff, because if you think we expect you should know what to do, that's just wrong. We don't expect that you would know what to do in this. I deal with people submitting permits daily. I don't expect people who do this routinely to understand each and
I
every
do.
component.
I do expect them to know, and I
The
let
high
them know
bar.
when they're acting like they don't.
But, you know, just to just sum that up, don't be afraid to reach out to these and ask those questions. It makes it easier on us too. You know, selfishly, the more questions you ask at this point, make it easier for us in the process. So we're not having to chase things down throughout. It helps you move through quickly, more quickly. A lot of those timelines that are longer are because people come in, hey, I'm a big builder in New York, Miami, you know, wherever, Texas, doesn't matter, but they do things a certain way there. We do it different than Pitkin County, and we're a half a block away. You know, we use the same codes, a lot of the same rules, have adopted so many things that are so similar, but to do a permit in Pitkin County versus, you know, unincorporated Pitkin versus the incorporated city of Aspen, two completely different experiences in so many ways. So to sum it up, just ask the questions that you need to ask.
Reach out ahead of time. The document resource library that I showed has pre-submittal links, like you just fill out the questionnaire and then you get to meet with a builder and a planner, and I don't have like the data to back it up, but we have a lot of anecdotal evidence of people getting far along in their permitting process and being like, oh my God, I am so happy I had a pre-submittal meeting that saved us a whole round, yada, yada, yada. So it's all set up if you just take advantage of it.
Would you like us to handle questions now specifically about the city, or would you like to? Would you guys like to go and we can kind of answer questions together?
Yes, I vote we just present and then answer all the questions at the end.
That's great.
More questions could blossom.
Yeah, more questions can be asked.
I've joined the meeting just because I think you need it to be honest. Let's look at this. Look at this. Alright, this is best. We're getting there. So quick introductions. I'm Larissa Lalonde. I'm the Development Services Manager.
Oh, I'm Rebecca Dunlap and I'm a planner.
John Huffman, Building Supervisor. This is almost our whole team. We're a team of about 30 people. That includes code enforcement, special events, short-term rentals, all the people that review permits and land use applications. This is always the first question we get, right? When is a permit required or land use review? Interior remodels are always exempt from land use review. Others, some minor exterior changes, windows and door replacements and stuff like that are usually exempt. We have a whole section in our land use code of exempt development activities, but you do have to talk to a planner to find out if you're exempt. It's not across the board, it's discretionary depending on the site constraints and a lot of other factors that can come into play. Building permits are required for most everything that's not finishes. And there are some things on this exemption list in the building code that still require zoning review. Like building doesn't need to look at small sheds or retaining walls or fences, but zoning does. So just because you see it there doesn't mean that you don't need any permit at all. So getting started.
And typical planning process, so looking at your land use review, which happens prior to building permit submittal or anything like that, you'll apply for we use an online program called Sages, probably different than what the city uses, just to make it easy. And you'll apply for a pre-application conference, which will connect you with a planner, and there will either be a site visit conducted or a meeting, and you'll either get an exemption letter, which goes straight to building permit, or you'll get a list for a full application for full land use review. And then something that's not on here is we do have a completeness and wait list for our land use applications that's dwindling down as we get more and more planners. But once you get in for your land use application, it's either an administrative review or a public hearing. And also most of these do involve public and referral comment periods. So once you get in with the planner and the land use application, the planner handles the bulk of that.
We also have a planner of the day, which is a great resource and good way to start this.
Yeah, and then on the building side, typically you'd come in after you either confirmed your development's exempt from land use approval, you have an exemption letter, or you have a land use approval. We also have pre-submittal meetings, just like the city, where one of our staff members sits down with you and they'll go through our checklist, and you'll give them what you have. We'll go through the checklist and we'll say, we need a couple more things, or you have everything you need. And that person will be your point of contact through the life of your permit, or through your permit application, I should say. So once you have a complete permit application, you'll submit for a building permit. And it happens in two parts. We have our zoning, engineering, environmental health, and your fire district would look at your permit in the first round. And that's because there are some issues that may not be able to be rectified after that first round. So we don't, or may need significant changes. So we don't want our building staff looking at something that's not actually going to make it through to building. And then that second round, the building department would look at it for fire and or life safety. Once you get your permit, you have a year to get started. You have to have your first inspection in a year, and then every 6 months after that, you have to have an inspection to keep that permit active. And then finally, when you're done, you get a C of O or a letter of completion, and your files get archived. County. And we, like the city, have a builder of the day email where you can ask whatever you feel like asking.
And I'll just add a couple things to that real quick. Obviously those reviews are tailored based on the scope of work, so not all of them will be added to every permit. And also there's no duplicate work for the applicant. When you submit a meeting request and you're deemed complete, then all of that information is pulled automatically, all the forms, all the documents you've uploaded into the building permit or into the planning application. So like it's in planning, you'll make a petition, but it does like carry forward. So that's a manual entry on that. This is just kind of a very general look at fees. Apparently we should be talking to APCHA more like the city of Aspen. But planning fees are generally much less than building permit fees. An exemption would be less than $1,000, and then they kind of range up to $10,000 for a very involved review. Building permit fees are value-based, just like City of Aspen. We have implemented a tiered structure trying to incentivize smaller homes and energy efficient homes, ones that are all electric. So if you have a house under 3250 that's all electric, it's a 1.6% permit fee, and you get to go right to the front of the line. So we've been doing this for about a year now, I guess, and we've had permits going out 4 weeks for new houses that skip the queue and just get prioritized above everything else. So it's working really well, I think. There's also some impact fees. Road impact fees are based on adding floor area. Those are usually pretty small. Our employee housing impact fees are rather large, but they're only applicable to houses that are more than 5,750 square feet to start with. And then if you do happen to have a house that big and you are local, you can sign a local occupancy covenant, and then your fees are greatly reduced as well. So it's really like trying to get at the massive second homeowner mansions that suck up a lot of resources and create a lot of jobs. And if it's helpful, we were thinking about just pulling up our website and kind of showing a few of the buildings that we think are most useful. So we can show you guys the development or the fee schedule website then. So we have our community development website that has a lot of really great pages. 2 other great resources are maps and more, which you can also get to our online records search from, and the assessor's office and generate a community development report. And then the clerk and recorder website for any recorded documents that are applicable to the property. So here's our homepage for community development. At the bottom here, you'll find some of the contacts for the most frequently reached out to different divisions of our department. And the quick links, you'll find our FAQ, which is probably similar to what Sydney was talking about earlier. A lot of really good information in there. Also, our land use and building codes are here. We have links directly from here to Maps Some More, which is our GIS system, and Laserfish, which is where we archive all of our previous land use and building permits. That's kind of that area. Up here is a link to our permit tracking software. So you will have to create an account, which is pretty basic, just name and contact info. And then these are all the different permit types you can submit for. There's a lot. To accompany that, we have this planning applications and permit types page, which has little drop downs for all the different types of planning applications, building permits, zoning, engineering. And a lot of these have info sheets, they have fees, you know, just basic information about that permit. Let's see. And the fee schedules right here, which just takes you to like ordinance and stuff. And then of course each division has its own website. So for planning, zoning, and engineering, building, long range, and lots of good information on there. Our Maps and More is so purple. I love Maps and More. It is better with the mouse than laptop. But you can show map layers, you can turn on parcels, addressing info. There's planning and zoning, so you can find out what zone district you're in.
Oh, just site constraints.
Yeah.
We also have the site constraints tab, which is what we're looking at primarily in land use review and planning. So I always like to show this to people when I'm going over their property at first, as we'll turn on all the layers. You can kind of see like what's mapped for the property, which is always helpful to know going into a project. Yeah.
I want to say about this. If you go under planning to land use records, oh, I'm sorry, under I want to, you can go to a specific property with an address or owner name or something like that. I just kind of zoomed in randomly. But if I wanted to pull all the land use records from my house right here, unfortunately, those pages the first one. Sometimes you have to scroll over to the next page, but this will take you into what we call Laserfish, which is like where we save all our archived records. And then this is from the assessors. You can generate a parcel. Here.
I don't think so, but I would say also, same as the city was saying, especially with land use, it's kind of like people never know exactly what can and can't be done. So definitely always email us. And then also if you're wanting to meet with a planner in person or builder, the best day to come into our office is Tuesday, because that's when we have everybody in the office. So I always like to tell people that.
We do have office staff every day. It just there may not be a planner there when you need one or a building person. So we're going to watch a bunch. All we've got.
Thank you.
So I'll just open it up to Q&A and please have any questions for City Board, County. How about it?
So I think in East Park, unit I'm in Midland Park Place condominiums. We're not looking to develop outside. We could use them all on them. So most of our permitting would be interior, small jobs. So are those things we would still come in and speak to the planner and say what needs to be permitted? Like if you're just replacing your kitchen cabinet, not doing anything else, is that permit worthy? Is
So the Midland Park Place, those are city for certain, I believe. So you're. Yes, is the easiest way to say it, right? What I mean by that is ask the questions. It's a lot harder to work backwards on this stuff for yourselves, for your, for any of you, but for us as well. So it might not require planning, but
For cabinets and interior. remodels,
Interior, no.
planning. Building, yeah.
But if you are, say, you're putting in a new dryer, right, a new washer and dryer, well, it's got a vent somewhere and say maybe it doesn't, there wasn't one there before. If that's getting vented, where that is on the building, zoning is gonna wanna know about it and have that. So the question should still be asked. So while it seems like it's all interior, that's something minor. Yes, you will wanna ask planner of the day and builder of the day. Another one is like mini splits for AAC, any of that type of stuff that might be something on the exterior that doesn't really seem like it would be much. It's still there. It's still something. Like for like windows, again, that's a pretty simple one, but if you want to move a window or you're making it a little bit bigger. Again, it kind of feels like inside, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, but it is. And so there are still cases where you would want to reach out to the planning side. Highly recommend always ask the question before doing anything inside of the building side, the building department. We'd rather just say, hey, you know what? Thanks for asking. You're good to go. We love that. That's a great answer that we can give, but it's a lot worse. We love doing that a lot more than coming back and saying, hey, here's a nice little red tag. You're doing stuff you're not supposed to without, or you're doing it without the permissions that you.
So compared on to, I go home tonight and my washer and dryer have just crapped out. So I can't just call Lowe's and say, bring 2 new ones or.
So like just replacing the appliance, that would be fine, right? It's plug and play.
But new venting would have to.
If you're, yes, exactly. So just little things it's like, yeah, you could do it without any issue, but you could also do it in a manner that would require. So I still recommend asking.
Okay, so new or changes are really the ones we have to look at most, just like quick replacement.
Yeah.
If you go to the link, that says, projects typically exempt from permit, you'll find things like, retiling or recarpeting, or like the most superficial level of your flooring or walls. When you get into things like cabinets, and you're in a multifamily home, like that's when, like the fire rated assemblies between units and things kind of come into play. So as soon as you're getting like deeper than that first layer, that becomes like a building code, issue, which I think kind of takes people by surprise sometimes. But that document does exist. That building projects typically exempt from permit 1, and it's pretty much as soon as you're going more than like a single layer deep.
I'm out of the pomegranate and Silver City. I've seen some people.
You'd be in the county for sure.
And yeah, we're in the county. So our situation is I'm representing the HOA. We have someone who's doing a massive remodel, apply for permits, etc. So what you said, what I understand is that she can't be her own contractor.
If
That would be with city.
if it's multifamily,
This is a county.
I know, but we do all their contractor license.
Oh, okay. Understood.
Okay, sorry.
We know we all like to.
We do it.
She's an owner contractor.
That is technically incorrect if there are more than 2 homes in the same building.
We've got 18.
Well, then that is technically incorrect.
Is the
Okay.
permit issue current?
Permit?
Is the permit issue?
Not yet.
So if she
I-
has all of her, and it's possible that the county isn't like quite as strict, but that's not a permit. We wouldn't issue, a homeowner builder contractor licensed project of that scope. If it were a city permit, the process might look a little bit different because and it is plausible, I don't know this woman, but if she is like a full-blown contractor, like sometimes people are so determined, they go get every certification that they could possibly imagine.
And it's possible.
And they are genuinely certified. But if it's just someone who's like, I'm a contractor and they have the homeowner builder, that's not something that we would let fly on a city permit in a multifamily home.
So you guys check that We don't need to check that.
We certify the contractors and then it kind of comes down to the county issuance
We
policy.
check it at issue.
Okay, so that's
We
what,
start reviewing the permit before you select.
thank you, that's it. So I just need to know how much I needed to follow up on that. And then that goes into my second question is, how often do you guys come out and have eyeballs on what's going on? This is something we've had issues before with same person, doing work without permits. And now she seems to be going through the steps, but how often do you guys have eyeballs on projects?
So in the county, we're spread out, right? We're from Redstone.
Right.
Down through Carbondale and back up
Meredith.
here, up to Meredith, by Meredith.
Yeah.
So really it's, if there's an inspector with an inspection in the area, or we get a complaint from a member.
I mean, it was just until a few months ago that we only had one code enforcement officer, so there was like absolutely no room for him to just be driving around. Now we have two, and I don't know, I think Melissa may be more up to date on that, but.
Oh, yeah, no, the code enforcement officers are in the field every day, and they have, obviously, they're like checking to see if their permits every time they see dumpsters with porta potties and stuff, but, the inspectors, we have 4 inspectors, basically, 2 electrical, 2 building, and they're out most of the day, every day.
You guys responded great when we called last time, but I just was wondering if things that changed or what we need to do. This is gonna be a year project.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely complaint driven, like, we don't drive around looking for violations, but if someone calls, we're good.
And what's our, as representing the HOA, what is our responsibility to keep, I mean, you hope that everybody does everything in good faith, but when you've got so much shared wall space, especially in, most of us live in older buildings that have all kinds of very, very bizarre old code, violate, things are not in the code anyway. So how much would it behoove us to try and have somebody come out on a regular basis to just walk through and see what she's doing? Or, I mean, I have no contractual construction knowledge.
I mean, our inspectors, there's required inspections that you have to get at every
Right.
point through the rest of the project.
Okay.
And
I've not been through this.
to
So
be
I don't know.
feasible, everything would have to be brought up to today's code if it's truly if you're gutting the unit or completely replacing everything. The amount that it's in your control, obviously in multi-family buildings, some things are out of your control,
Right.
your unit, but everything in your unit wants to be brought up to today's code.
And wait, when a building permit's open, how often do you think an inspector's seeing it?
It really can vary.
Yeah.
But
We have some 20-year-old buildings, but they don't.
Well, but yeah.
But if someone's trying to get the project done, someone's probably out there, I guess at least every other week.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know.
I will say, just kind of broadly around the whole HOA concept related to building permits, it's often a very difficult thing for us to navigate when folks pursue work without permits and their neighbors are concerned about that. We can ask to gain access to sort of look at and see what's happening within a unit, but we can't require that. And I do think when we take in a permit, we require an HOA form that says that I've got the blessing of my HOA to submit for this permit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so it is, I will just say, it's fundamentally a difficult issue for us.
Yeah.
We try to help facilitate, try to help mediate when we can. But sometimes these turn into civil matters between members within an HOA if it really gets ugly. And we try to avoid that and we try to help out, but it can be a difficult thing to navigate when people are not being good actors related to construction projects in their properties. And it's just a difficult situation
But you're with the city.
with the city. But I think it's probably, I would guess.
For both.
Definitely.
Obviously, we don't have near as many.
In the county, yeah.
But it might be worth it to just like ping the county on the specific project and the contractor involved and just kind of like randomly confirm that that's the correct.
You're always welcome to file a complaint.
Which is awesome.
Or call the front
I
desk
will-
or email, either place.
I will say our process is a little different in that HOAs are only a part of the land use process. And so if something's exempt from land use and goes right to building permit, we cannot get HOA. That's between
What?
them and their HOA to work out. If something doesn't go through planning, if it goes through planning, then we refer to as the HOA and we incorporate their comments, but if it's exempt and it goes right to building permit, then, we don't require HOA approval with the permit.
So what you're telling me is she doesn't have to have the approval of the HOA to do the interior work that she's doing?
That would be
No.
between her and the HOA to work it out.
You gotta be kidding me.
Well, that's what we mean by it's a civic matter at that point. Like, the city makes the applicant tell us that the HOA is cool with it. And so we kind of have that to like back them up, but ultimately, if there were an issue, it's still a civil matter. It's between you and the.
For us, I mean, we can only enforce our building land use code. We can't enforce HOA regulations.
Okay. That must seem like.
Well,
Because I don't
you
really
have
understand.
a signed agreement between you and your members of your HOA, correct?
Pardon?
You would, I would assume that there's a signed membership, like, you know, for people who live in there. Declarations that they say, we're gonna follow your rules.
Yeah.
What she's saying in that is, we aren't privy to that agreement and we do not enforce those rules. We
Okay,
enforce the building codes and the land use codes and apply those.
right.
But we don't do your own, you know, each HOA has different rules.
Oh, of course. And I see
So,
what you're saying. Now I
That's
see what you're
when Ben says it's a civil disagreement. Now it is they're breaking your rules, which may be different from our rules.
Right.
So we aren't looking to tell them and give them, say, you're good to go for that HOA.
And I understand that there's no way you guys could do that.
So
Absolutely.
I just,
Now I understand. That's more clarification. Thank you. Yes.
well, thank
But
you.
it's still pretty much, we have to keep our eyeballs.
And I guess I'll add one more thing to that because it seems relevant, but it also might be kind of negative. So I'm sorry for reading on the parade, but we also, you know, for our attorney, only require the representative of the HOA to sign a permit if they're doing work in the common area. And sometimes that can get really heated when it's like a 2-unit condominium versus like if we required sign off from every owner in Aspen Village every time they wanted to do something in their park, nothing would ever get done. And so it's only the representative if it's in the common area that matters stuff. And then it's between the owners and the representative to work out. John mentioned something earlier about windows, so I thought was really interesting when we were talking about coming here. I want to share that.
I was gonna say, please reach out to us before you buy any windows. I don't know how many times. Say, it'll save the pain. You know, both the city and the county have sort of above code or above national code requirements, energy requirements for windows. So if you're thinking about buying windows, start with an email to builder today before you put any money down or pay for any windows.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because we've got a grant program and windows are not just happening. They're doing, so just.
Yeah, I mean, in the county, at least it's specifically the U factor of the windows that we're concerned about, and that's a measure of how efficient the windows are. And Lowe's, for example, has no obligation to sell you windows that meet our requirements. But when you come in to get a permit and you've already put a down payment down or bought the windows outright and can't install them, there's obviously a lot of friction there.
But Lowe's does sell.
Yes, they do.
Compliant
Yeah.
with
They
that.
certainly do.
Yeah, it's just not all what they do.
Do you mean, what if you're just replacing the paint also? In other words, you lost that gas in there or whatever, so it's cloudy, right, in between the two. So you're not doing the whole casement or the.
Can depend on the situation on if a painting replacement is exempt or not. That would be my answer. I don't know. The city-
We have an exemption for individual paintings in certain situations. So I think the best thing to do is ask the question, you know, specific question to the specific building, you know, wherever it may be with that specific entity. That's the easiest way to explain how to get through permitting as painless as possible, is to say, what do I need to do? As opposed to saying, here's what I'm gonna do. or I know what I'm supposed to do.
Or here's what I did.
Yeah.
Or here's what I did, right? But that's the easiest and best way to get from point A to point B, which is fixing that window or whatever it may be, replacing your shower, anything, is to ask whatever department, jurisdiction you are going to be working with, what do I need so I can do this work? It's going to get you there the best way. So there are exemptions, like I said, specifically to your question, in the city for just a pane replacement. And, and then there's cases where it might not be acceptable depending on what we're looking at. So the best way is just to ask.
In the city, if it's determined that a repair, this would be an interior, exterior repair, no changes, just repair. If it's deemed health and safety, does that speed up the permitting?
Repair's already pretty speedy,
Okay.
so it's kind of like assumed in the repair that there's some element of urgency involved.
In the city, repairs are exactly that. You are putting it back essentially
Something's broken.
what it is. It isn't like, oh, I got a broken stair on my deck, I need to replace the whole deck, right? If it's like you're saying, your example of a pane in that window,
This is something different, but yeah.
Okay.
I understand.
but so it's very much a like for like, given certain things. You've got a leak in, on your patio like this, it's leaking in down below, your waterproofing is gone. And this is a snow melted deck, right? And just go real quick here, humor me. You gotta tear up that snow melt and that, all this tile and everything to fix that waterproof membrane. We're not gonna ding you for the, replacing that snow melt and replacing that tile, everything. It's part of, the existing building code. So yes, we will definitely expedite repair permits when they are repair permits, but they're standalone repair permits. That's what it is. You don't get to do plug a remodel in with it, if that makes sense. You're not gonna be able to piggyback.
In an example like that, is it fine to have the contractor do the permitting?
Mhm.
Is it better that way?
A lot of times contractors doing that work have experience with submitting for the permits and navigating the system and what it is. I would take advantage of that if you already got them hired on, because it isn't an easy process, but it doesn't mean they have to. But it's certainly it's a reasonable question to ask of them.
I would add, and I'm sure there's a way to do it in Salesforce as well as Sages, but ask to be added to that permit as a collaborator or a viewer. I don't know what your language is in the city. We would call it a collaborator, but that way you can see where the permit's at. If there's any action required, you can keep an eye on it. Kind of.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Another question, because there are multiple different kinds of permits, if like what's happening in our situation. There's demolition permits and then there's building permits, and then I'm assuming, do the building permits also encompass the electrical, the plumbing? So all those are separate. Okay, in order for work to start, can you get the demo permits and do the demolition and then do the building permit and then you start the building? So you don't have to have everything done before you start?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so ostensibly, you could have a demolition permit and then the interior is demoed and could sit there for a while until the next permit is done. Same thing with the building part before you get electrical, plumbing, all of that. So we could take,
I'll say sometimes the demo comes out a bit in advance, but usually the MEP, the sub.
Before you can proceed with your building permit, there are items we have to check on those we call them sub permits, mechanical, electrical, before you can wrap up your building permit, where you can proceed to the next step on your building permit. You have to have inspections on those sub permit items.
okay. There's a lot of permits that are required. So I just wasn't sure of when
No, they usually happen pretty close together. Like sometimes we'll be holding some permits until the building permit's ready to issue. So we can't issue an electrical permit, building permit. So they come in pretty close.
We're just trying to figure out if we're getting a completion bond, like what the timing might be, so we can have an idea. And is there any way that your department can, I mean, nobody's really gonna know how long it's gonna take. But if we're doing a completion bond, can you guys advise on it?
No, yeah, people could take as long as they want, unfortunately. I definitely have some eyesore properties that the neighbors are not too happy about. You can't make them finish.
No, that's why we wanna get a completion bond,
Yeah,
so, okay.
Is that a
Yeah.
contract?
sorry. Do you have an example?
I'm actually writing a memo to city council right now about all those projects, and, you know, I do think the concept of completion bonds are interesting. I will say that they're typically used by jurisdiction for contractors who are working on infrastructure projects. They're not typically imposed on private property construction projects, either residential or commercial. And so, you know, there might be some bond products out there that, you know, might be appropriate for an HOA to impose on one of their members who's doing a project with their property and like properties. But they're not a typical product. And there's been a lot of suggestion that we apply them to, you know, some of the projects that are happening in town right now that are languishing. But it's not a typical response. And if they were to be, you know, the conditions that those bonds were issued on were not upheld, what do you do with the money? Do you like go and like finish the product on somebody else's property? Like it's kind of an interesting concept. I mean, it might be used as a stick, as a sort of a negative incentive that they got to pay you a penalty, but it probably doesn't translate into the outcome that you're looking for, which is a speedier project.
Yeah, we just don't want it to last.
We know. Yeah. Yeah.
So what you're saying is the completion bond is not necessarily going to get us the result that we want.
Yeah.
But it may be an incentive to try to get it completed.
Yeah.
In a certain period of time.
Yeah, if you can find the product, that just finding, I know that term of a completion bond is a term that's out kind of in conversation on these topics. Finding those products is a challenge. And that I don't think they're like commonly available. And I will say that there was a slide that the county had, and, you know, we could have put the exact same slide up. I think, you know, one of the challenges of this is that we live in a country that's based in both statutory and common law property rights, and associated with the international building codes that drive most of our work. And there's really clear rules for once you have a permit in place, a permit issued, as long as you're showing progress and doing work, you know, that can be inspected within a 6-month period of time, your building permit's remaining active regardless of how much actual progress is happening on your permit. So projects that linger, you know, they're pretty seriously protected from within the building code, within common law understandings of property rights, and it's a difficult thing to navigate.
So so a permit is not issued for a specific period of time. I thought it was a limitation. Okay.
As long as you're getting inspections, from the time you submit for a building permit, you have 1 year to pick it up. So if we give you comments back and then you don't do anything for 11 months, it's gonna expire and you're gonna have to start over. But yeah, once it's issued and you keep getting inspections, it just stays open. Sometimes a very long time.
I think generally speaking, people want to get their project done.
Usually.
Yes.
Generally speaking.
Not always.
I agree with this. I mean, that's a little bit. I'm just trying to find out what our idea of what parameters are that we have, and basically, you don't have to.
I was just gonna reiterate the complaint again. Cause then the code enforcement will go out and see. So if there's something happening, you're always welcome to submit that and someone will look into it.
just a curiosity question, are, at the basic level, are all codes that you guys go by at least from the state, and then you can just increase it, I mean, by making it more,
Restricted,
Yeah.
I think the word you're looking at.
Yeah, I think both the county and the city engage in the same process, that we're on a fairly regular adoption. So the ICC, which is the body that kind of sets the basis of building codes across the country, they are in regular readoption of code updates. And we're on we kind of adopt every 3 years, 6 years, kind of.
We're six.
Yeah, we're 6 too.
Every 3 years, a new version of the ICC full set of codes, the IBC, the IRC, which is, the building code, the International Building Code is National Residential Code, IFC, the fire code, all that. Every 3 years, those are updated. And we adopt every 6 with our own, sorry.
And then, no, I was just gonna say, and Sam could probably talk about this better than I, but I think both the county and the city also, on top of those baseline codes, we, a lot of energy stuff, we have kind of gone above what those base level national codes are. And I think that was the point on windows particularly, because our standards for windows are pretty rigorous.
But the only state level codes are wildfire code now, an energy code, that's a minimum across the state. And then electrical and plumbing versus minimum codes. So for the actual building code, every jurisdiction, some don't even adopt a building code in the state of Colorado. So every jurisdiction handles the building code as they see fit.
But then everything outside the building is kind of regulated by the land use code. So like when do you need an earthmoving permit or tree removing permit?
If you did make a complaint, would they know who made the complaint?
You can permit anonymously.
Yeah.
We can't really.
We can't respond to anyone, so it's hard. Yeah, we, for the city, Ben, we want to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a gray area. So the main mechanism to make a complaint in the city is this 311 system that we have. There are ways within that system to be anonymous. If there are violations that the city can see from the right of way, we might be okay with an anonymous complaint. If there are things that we have to go on property to sort of try to evaluate or resolve, we're not gonna approach a property owner to try to understand that unless we've got somebody's name that's made the complaint. So it's a little bit of a gray area. I would say generally as a broad rule, like, we don't take anonymous complaints, but if it's something that's kind of egregious that we can see from the right of way, we'll do something about it without having your name associated with it.
That's the same with the county. We do have a little hiccup in our software that, like, for some reason, when we tried to make it so that you could submit a complaint without logging in, our ability to create new accounts went away. And we need to follow up on that. But so you do have to have an account with Sages, or you can always call our code enforcement team or email them. But if we can see it from the right of way, we don't have to disclose the source of the complaint.
To give a little bit more color to this, we are also bound by Colorado Open Records request laws, and even if you send an email to a staff member and said, hey, my neighbor's doing something that's really out of bounds, can you go check up on this? And your neighbor, we show up and kind of see what happened, and oh yeah, they put up a fence without a permit, or they did something on the project without a permit, and we can see that from the right of way or whatever. Even though the complaint was kind of done anonymously and it wasn't formally done within the system, if your neighbor were to file a Colorado open records request with us, you'd have to provide that email. And so it's a difficult situation, and we know how sensitive neighbor relations can be, and we try to be sensitive to those kinds of things, but sometimes state law precludes us from dealing with that as sensitively as we could.
Thank you.
So you're saying by mail that how do we turn that?
Yeah, or
Just wait in the lobby and grab some of our way to.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that, do you guys have a complaint system that's kind of like an online submission, or do you guys?
We specifically do for community development.
So, yeah, the common one across the city is Aspen 311. And there is a way to submit complaints on that anonymously. Depending on the issue, it's much more likely that staff is going to respond to that if it's coming from a specific person. Depending on the nature of the issue.
Is that for all complaints? And then you say, like you said through this is land use, this is criminal.
There's a triage that happens.
Anything regarding fire related, maybe checking with the fire department as far as they come by and check your property, something like that.
Yeah,
Are you talking about for like wildfire resiliency kind of stuff and defensible space around like wildland urban interface questions? Aspen Fire District, and they do it seasonally. I don't think you can do it year round, and they tend not to like to do it in winter because they sometimes can't get a full evaluation of vegetation on your property. But they are doing free property assessments of defensible space. And so they would be the ones to contact it, and they're very welcome to do it when they're doing it, to come out to your property and do an evaluation of that. And it was mentioned, but the city is in the middle of an ordinance adoption right now. We were at first reading last week. I think the county's on a similar timeline. It's adopting a new Colorado wildfire resiliency code. And there are both building hardening components of that, of like materials and that kind of stuff to protect structure, but there's also requirements for defensible space around properties. And, I think in partnership, the city, in partnership between our Parks Department, our city forester, and the Aspen Fire Department, Fire District, we've got a pretty good partnership going in terms of helping homeowners, try to create that defensible space around property. A couple of years ago, if you would have asked to cut down trees adjacent to your property or adjacent to your home, you would have run into serious friction from our Parks Department. That's been significantly eased in the last 18 months, probably.
Yeah, I didn't realize you could just pay X amount of money and have a tree tucked up, and I thought so special things, but I found out more of that. They're not so special, it's just a money issue.
No, they're pretty special. And we also encourage people, if you're in a situation where you need to cut down that tree for defensible space purposes, we really encourage people to plant another tree on the property that's outside of that space that we've identified as needing to be defensible. So, and again, I think you've heard this refrain several times. Our city force is very happy to come out to your property and help with those kinds of questions if they come up. Give some guidance on those topics. One other topic that hasn't come up this evening that I do know has been an issue for HOAs, particularly multifamily HOAs, is roof replacements. In the most recent adoption of our code in the city, and I think we've got some parallel codes in the county, we have the RENT program, which is the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program, that attempts to mitigate energy consumption outside of the building envelope of your home. So pools, spas. The reason I bring up roofs is because we recently added heat tape for roofs to that list of exterior energy consumption that we are included in the RENT program. The RENT program basically, if you've got those kinds of energy uses on your property, we ask that you either mitigate them with on-site photovoltaic, or you can pay a fee in lieu that goes into our RENT program that helps to kind of respond to the climate crisis with supportive organizations like CORE and that kind of thing. But when we adopted our most recent code, we newly included heat tape. So if you're doing a roof replacement and you're redoing your heat tape, there can be significant REMP implications to that. When we updated our code, we specifically asked city council if they wanted these same requirements to apply to deed restricted units. And the answer was yes. It is translated into some significant dollars that are associated with roof replacements on APCHA multifamily projects that have gone through roof replacements. I will say it's a topic that has come up with our city council, and we're going to be revisiting that for a conversation, probably sometime in the summer, I'm guessing. It is a topic that we think is important. Roof tape, heat tape systems can suck a lot of energy. And so it's a topic that if they're not well designed and they're not as minimum as necessary to serve their purpose, I think they do have a negative effect on our ability to kind of control exterior energy use. But I just say that because it is a topic sometimes that people come into roofing permits completely surprised by that rent requirement for heat tape when heat tape systems are needing to be replaced. So it is a topic that I would say in our relationship with APCHA HOAs who are trying to do deferred maintenance on the roof system. It's a topic we've been running into.
So we have heat tape on some of our roofs.
Yep.
Does that apply to existing heat tape or new heat tape? When we move forward with that?
It's a great question, and we do provide some exemption for some amount of heat tape before those rent requirements come in, but it's not a lot, and it's kind of from our perception kind of the minimum necessary to serve what heat tape is supposed to do. Some people and some roofing companies think that you need to have much more robust heat tape systems associated with the roof, but it is a question that my friend Sam here navigates on the regular. About what happens in a roofing situation where there's an existing heat tape system that's coming down. It's 30 years old, so it's getting chucked in the trash. We're putting up a new roof and we're putting on a whole new heat tape system. It's definitely a topic of negotiation on
a regular basis. So multifamily buildings like that, our exemption is 1,000 watts of heat tape per unit. The heat tapes that you see out on the market range from 6 watts per foot to 12 watts per foot, depending on size, strength, everything. So it gives you roughly 165, 175 linear feet, right, of exempt. So if you have 10 units, in theory, we could give you 10,000 watts of exempt heat tape. Like Ben said, a lot of times, and you want to say it to, there's a laziness that can happen in life in anything. And sometimes it's easier to just throw heat tape up than to think about, do we really need heat tape there? If you're going to put heat tape on the sunny side of the building, it kind of got south, west facing. It doesn't make a ton of sense, right? Your heat tape isn't there to melt the snow. It is there to create a path for the water to leave the roof without creating ice dams, which become real detrimental to structure. So if you are having significant issues with ice damming, heat tape isn't the answer. But a lot of roofers will use it because it's easier than fixing the real problem, is way of saying. But we want you to think about what you're putting up, instead of just saying, yeah, I'm going to put this grid, all the way around everywhere on the roof. Is it really needed? So, with those exemptions, we give you a little bit to work with. What you choose to do with it is that. So you can get around without having to put as much on, with a little bit of forethought and effort on that side. And there's some places that you can't do much about. In town, go up behind Coke Lumber Park or in Shadow Mountain there. It's called Shadow Mountain. It doesn't see a lot of sun this time of year, and you're going to have to find ways to melt that snow because the sun isn't getting there. So
you speak to the difference between, I think the new code as of last year said new roofs need snow stops or snow guards or whatever, all those.
So that's part of the code. It depends, even with tape, the tape is there. That's a personal preference. And again, it's there to do exactly what I said, is to give that pathway to remove the water. The snow clips are a code provision that is there for life safety. And so we aren't required everywhere, but they're required over walkways. You know, if that roof slants, and also the actual pitch of the roof will play a part in what that is. If you're over a 310 roof, then you will need them. But if you're a lower, a pitch roof, it isn't required. But over walkways means egress. Essentially, the mailman shouldn't be able to walk up to your house and have the roof slide and knock them over, right? Or someone just walking down the sidewalk there. If you're, say, in Smuggler Trailer Park, where we have 0 lot lines, and you're walking on the side of your building, your home, it shouldn't be able to slide off the other house, damage your house, damage you walking there. So it's specific to areas where it's required for life safety.
Okay, we're dealing with that exact issue since we have a homeowner who has read that these are required for access areas. And this person has put a storage unit on their own, not part of us, behind her unit. And now after reading the new code, she feels unsafe going back there because there's no clips, guards.
There's snow clips is a ton, there's a lot of terms. Yes.
No, she doesn't. And so our feeling as a board is, well, that is not accessible area. There's no doors back there. You put that back there yourself. It is not an HOA expense. And so it's just that was a good description you gave me of accessible walkways, stairways, and let people access.
We can't protect you from you, but we can protect everyone else in here, right? No, not a problem. And if you need more specifics before we leave, I'm glad to give you my card, and you're welcome to take a picture, shoot it over. We could discuss further. We don't always have the best reputation in the community, right? But truthfully, almost all of us are living in affordable housing throughout the valley, commuting here to work, whatever it is. We understand this way of life better than the Aspen way of life, in a way. So I know what our reputation may be, but I promise you, we do this because we want to help. And again, it goes back to what I said from the very beginning, just ask.
Are heated sidewalks, driveways, decks under the ramp thing?
Absolutely.
I've been here long enough, I remember, no heated side, no, they're not gonna burn energy now, they're all over the place.
But we've introduced, it's called our annual exterior energy usage budget. So it is 200 million BTUs annually. That seems like a lot. Okay, but that burns up pretty quick. And so if you want to do snow melt, it's going to limit your capabilities of doing an outdoor spa, outdoor heaters, heat tape, pool, any of those things. If you want an exterior pool, if you want, to have a big fire pit, you're going to be more limited on the amount of snow melt that you can add in. So we are kind of making it now, you don't just get to put as much as you want in. It's very much something that is, we give you the options of choosing what you'd like to do, but you only have so many BTUs to spend.
Then same for the county.
Yeah, this is the energy stuff. I think the county and the city are pretty aligned on. There might be some really nuanced differences, but it's pretty dang close.
Yeah, I think we might have some more specific residential applications or single family residence applications, and you probably have many more.
Yeah.
Multi-family.
Who decides on, solar panels like on the roof? Well, because we are in Aspen, we're more worried, I think, about aesthetics rather than anything. It seems to me, I mean, everything's gotta be beautiful and perfect to look at. And that seems like other things go by the wayside over that.
I will say that, you know, those kinds of things sit in the land use code rather than the building code. And I would say that's a topic that for a long time, amongst all of other Aspen's regulations that we had, you know, we're pretty persnickety on a lot of different things. I would say that the land use code has been pretty tolerant of photovoltaics in terms of height allowances, both for roof mounted and ground mounted. The only place where we tend to get into discussions about whether they're appropriate if somebody's proposing them related to a designated historic property. Sometimes HPC asks for location on, you know, not a street facing facade, maybe on the back part of the property, or maybe they put the system on new construction rather than on the historic resource itself. But I will say, you know, I think more than some communities which have been pretty restrictive about photovoltaics, I would say that Aspen's code has been fairly tolerant of them and encouraging of them, really, particularly with the rent program since I think the emergence of the rent program in 2000.
There is a code provision on any new construction, and then certain existing constructions after they meet certain kind of thresholds of work levels and alteration level on those existing places. But we do require a solar ready area to be provided in the plans. So you have to show a specific area on your roof that meets specific parameters in the energy code, as far as square footage, the area of it. There's exemptions for it for areas of where you don't have roof that orients well with the sun, you know, we do look at that. But yeah, we highly encourage it, you know, and we're, especially with our drive and our push towards more electricity, it's becoming even more prevalent. You know, in the city, we're requiring heat pumps on that new construction, and again, alteration stuff. Those are electric. Well, so we want to find better ways to drive those vehicles, so to speak, you know, and that is, you know, we require electric vehicle charging, you know, or readiness. We call it EV readiness. ESS, electric storage systems. We require you to be ready for those. We don't require you to do them yet, but we're saying you need to be prepared. You got to wire for this and prepare yourself for this. You know, we require stoves, you know, like your cooking apparatus and your dryer to be electric ready as well. So we are really pushing towards that electric, and that coincides very much with the photovoltaic, you know, energy production, you know, and on-site energy renewables that will drive that and get us to a better place in, you know, fossil fuel usage. So.
For the county, really streamlined our process for solar about 8 years ago. I remember that we really being every well doesn't it know, but I mean, it's such a wonderful change, but we are going to public noticing, you know, the plus of potential danger, even the rights building fund at those times, severely. Zoning doesn't even look at requirement anymore. It's just a building review. So it's definitely on a one license or we were changed. Sure.
Any other questions? Thanks, everybody, for coming. Yeah, thank you to our presenters, city and county. You're awesome.
Anyone wants, like I said, we had the cards for like builder of the day, planner of the day, like the building support line for any help submitting permits. please come on up and I was gonna give you my card. Yeah.
Iman? Herman.
Who's yours again?
Karen.
Very good. to meet you. That's mine. Yep. And please, reach out, let us know. Thank you all for coming. Awesome. Spread the word. Feel free to reach out if you need anything, got any questions, you know, yeah, I do mean,
Sorry, so thanks, Colin.
game. Well, thank you. Absolutely.